Hello everyone, I'm Patricia Diorio and this is Get Conscious Now. Welcome to the inspirational, engaging, entertaining talk show that is committed to making a global impact to build a better world by raising consciousness. Our mission is to explore the nature, the true nature of our physical reality and its practical implications for living a happy, more mindful, and enjoyable life. Today's episode is about conscious lifestyle. So what does it mean to actually be living life consciously? Well, we're going to hear all about that today because we have with us a guest who is the co-founder of Conscious Lifestyle magazine, which, like this show, is committed to raising consciousness, but also to being a catalyst for the transformation of the media. Imagine that. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. It's going to be a great one. Now, I always enjoy this part. I have the pleasure of introducing my co-host and partner in GCN, Stu Zimmerman, who always brings that vibe of love to our set with his wit, his wisdom, and also that big, broad smile that you're all getting right now.
Patricia, thank you, sweetie. Thank you, as always.
You're welcome.
Yeah, welcome everybody to another edition of Get Conscious Now. And as Patricia had a beautiful introduction for the program, we do incorporate not only the mental aspects of consciousness, but also the heartfelt. So we can just call that love. And I know you're going to love this show. And if you're new to the program, you may want to come to YouTube, where we have our own station, our own channel, if you will, of all of our prior episodes, which are like 25 in number right now, including Deepak Chopra, Reverend Michael Beckwith, and a handful of others covering a whole host of topics, all of which are about how to bring forward thinking into everyday life. So please join us and join us on Facebook as well. And we've got a great program for you. We also have a wonderful quantum quotes by Patricia, as well as some Stus Views by guess who? That would be me. But before we do, and before we meet our guest and get into the interview, please stay tuned for a message from one of our supporters.
If you are passionate about your message, if you want your book to be the best it can be, and if you want someone to do it for you with your collaboration every step of the way, then Ellen Reed is the one for you. Get Conscious Now is proud to be sponsored by American Riviera Bank. It's our bank, and we feel good about it. All we have to do today is turn on the television set or take a look at all the magazines that are lining the grocery stores and the supermarkets and the checkout stands to realize the dire importance of the changes that are needed in the mass media today. But the good news is that as more and more of us wake up and as consciousness starts to really seep into the masses, that there's more and more of a demand for conscious programming and conscious copy in the media. So our guest today is a pioneer in that genre. He is Justin Faerman, who is the co-founder with his partner Megan McDonald of a magazine called Conscious Lifestyle Magazine, which is a major platform in the transformation of the media today. Justin and his team are about consciousness, period. He is also the founder of a coaching program that he started called the Art of Flow, and we're going to hear all about that today. It's a very interesting topic, what flow is. And Justin has also been the founder of several successful conscious businesses in personal growth and healing and health. And also, he has started a company, a superfoods company. So we're going to hear about some of his companies today as well. So I'm really delighted to welcome Justin Faerman to Get Conscious Now. Thank you very much, Justin, for being here today.
Thanks,
it's a pleasure.
Patricia. Thanks, Steve.
Welcome.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So I'm always interested, especially dealing with the millennials, and you are a millennial at 30, how you're so young and so conscious and awake and aware. Did you have a specific way you were raised to come into this, or tell us a little bit about your background that brought you to this place?
I think the truth is that I came in with it. I'm not going to lie. I'd like to say, that my parents gave it to me, but I was kind of rebellious and very You know, I had a lot of big ideas when I was a little kid, and I was always thinking about consciousness and why are we here, and these really deep existential topics, and it's just kind of been my driving force throughout life. And my parents were definitely supportive. I mean, they you know, they were loving. I didn't grow up in a troubled home or anything like that, so I always had support for whatever I did, and I think that really helped, to give them credit. And you know, it was through my own journey of getting disconnected from that part of myself, that conscious part of myself, as I got into my teen years, that I ultimately rediscovered my connection with myself and with, you know, spirituality and consciousness. And the last 10 years or so, my journey have really been about giving that gift to the world and stepping into it fully. And so here we are today.
Did you find that you had friends and growing up that were in alignment with your thoughts, or did you kind of like a stranger in a strange land?
Stranger in a strange land, for sure. I felt like I was on an island sometimes, and you know, it was painful, and that's ultimately why I kind of shut that part of myself down, is because I didn't have the community like we have here in Santa Barbara, and that like we're building with the magazine, and that I've created and tapped into now. So I didn't feel comfortable, you know, sharing that part of myself, and I really shut it down. And that was painful. You know, anytime we don't honor our gifts and live our purpose, it's the soul is just like, you know, in a crisis. So that got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore, and I ultimately, you know, a series of events happened where I got back in touch with that part of myself, and it was like a homecoming, and I felt great and amazing and alive. And this is really just, you know, the culmination of that now. Everything I'm doing with the magazine and these businesses and the coaching. So it's a beautiful place to be, really.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk about the magazine.
Sure.
Conscious Lifestyle Magazine. What sets it apart from the other magazines out there?
Good question. I think what really sets us apart is this concept of highest transformational value that we use to decide what content gets in the magazine. So we feel that a lot of magazines are all about celebrity, that they really just want to get famous people in there so they can sell more issues and all that. And that's fine, and there's reasons why people are celebrities. Usually they've done exceptional things, and there's good reason to have them in there. But we also like to use this highest transformational value standard, which is where we say, when someone's reading this piece, how changed are they going to be when they come out the other side? Like, how much is this going to contribute to their health, their wellness, their quality of life? And we really use that to calibrate what we're going to bring in. And you know, when someone is a celebrity and also does that, great. But if someone is, you know, just let's say someone next door who's really brilliant and not very famous, but they're really well spoken and they have great ideas, they can really help people, we'll recognize that and bring them into the magazine. So it's really what we call like a meritocratic platform, where it's really about who you are, what's your idea, how much can it help, and that's what we use to calibrate what we bring into the magazine.
Did you coin that word? Meritocratic?
I think I am coining it, yeah.
Oh,
Sounds good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It sounds wonderful. On merit, not on celebrity.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, great. Well, I noticed in your mission statement that you really stress this idea of change beginning within each of us. And and Gandhi's quote was, if you want to see change in the world, it begins with us. What's the exact quote that he says?
You must be the change that you want to see.
You must be the change you want to see.
Like that, yeah.
Right. So talk a little bit about that. I mean, you alluded to it in your prior answer, but I'd like you to share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so obviously there's some truth to that quote. When you hear it, it kind of strikes you at the core of your being. And it's really been my experience, and I think that a lot of the most recent scientific research is showing us how true that is, and showing us that we really are creating our reality, that consciousness is fundamental to the experience that we're having. And so we see the world as a reflection of the current state of consciousness of humanity, that that we're only having the problems that we're having because there's so much healing that's needed. So we ultimately believe that through facilitating that healing, we'll have the biggest impact. By helping people be the change that they want to see, that will have the biggest impact in the world. And so that's our guiding philosophy, and ties back to the transformational value content, is that by helping people shift in that way and just create an amazing life for themselves that's really enjoyable, we can actually heal the planet. So it's really a win-win situation.
Why don't you give us some examples of some topics or areas that you would cover in the magazine that are highly transformational, and what I'm getting the sense is practical.
Right.
It's something that can practically help the reader to be that change.
Absolutely. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with Bruce Lipton, for example.
Oh yeah,
Right,
Sure.
he's one of my heroes.
Yeah, brilliant man. And so that idea of this really deep mind-body connection.
So much of our programming comes from the subconscious that we're not even aware of it. 95% of our waking state is run by the subconscious, and we can have positive programming in there, which we do, but a lot of it is negative programming depending on our childhood and what happened and how we were raised and the experiences in life. And I think what he stresses is we really need to be able to discern those subconscious programs so that we can shift them.
Right,
And
absolutely.
that's critically important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say that's really one of the main issues that we're facing as a society is that we have all these inherited programs from generations.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
consciousness has shifted on the planet. The amount of wisdom and knowledge that's available to us through the internet, the enlightened ideas that are out there, we're very different than we were 500, 1,000 years ago, but we're still running on programming that originated back then. So much of the work now, I believe, is about going in and clearing that out. Just like you're saying, it's all stored in our subconscious, passed down from our parents. And so that's our work as conscious creators and beings, is that we need to go in and clear that out so that we can show up happy, healthy, healed, whole. And the world will reflect that.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that, though, is because so much of it is subconscious, we don't know what's happening. We get triggered by something and boom, we're triggered. But to be aware that we're getting triggered by something is what's critically important.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure that based on the articles that I've read, not all of them, but many of the articles I've read in your magazine, you really are about that, helping people to become present to when they get triggered by something that leads to an unhappy experience in their lives or an old pattern that they finally can see, and then they can make that shift. So it's awareness. It comes back to awareness and mindfulness.
Yeah, absolutely. Awareness, mindfulness, that's a big theme that we have in the magazine, and it's really coming into its own right now.
So, who are some of the contributors, may I ask, in terms of who's contributing to the magazine
Sure.
and the articles that you're publishing?
So Peter Russell's been a big contributor for us. We just published an article by him in our last issue. He's a really brilliant theoretical physicist and mathematician and consciousness researcher.
I've met him. He's an amazing man.
He's brilliant.
Yeah, he's really brilliant.
He's brilliant.
What was his book? He's written several of them, but it's about
remember
God in the title. I can't recall what it is. Anyway.
Yeah. He's brilliant, and so it's a pleasure to have him in there. We have also had Jack Canfield. Let's see who else.
And he was co-author of Chicken Soup of the Soul.
He was co-author of Chicken Soup here in Santa Barbara as well. Yeah, brilliant guy. We have a lot of people that aren't as famous as well too. That people wouldn't recognize their names, but have truly amazing ideas and have actually been some of our favorite articles.
You have this other business that you started called The Art of Flow. Is that the title of it, The Art of Flow? I know that's the website. But
Right.
it's about flow. And we hear the word flow a lot today, but I'm not quite sure whether people really understand what it means to be in the flow of life. Can you talk about that and share a little bit about your work as a coach?
Yeah, absolutely. So flow, I think as most people know flow, they know it popularized by this guy, Csikszentmihalyi. I think I'm saying his last name right. He's a really brilliant researcher who talks about flow states, which are moments of heightened awareness and creativity and learning and expanded consciousness and awareness, and they're by their very nature they're temporary. They last for maybe a few hours at most if you're lucky. And Olympic athletes get into these heightened states of flow.
Kind of like the zone.
The zone,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
And that's amazing. The flow states are amazing. The kind of flow that I talk about and teach about is more like a Zen type of flow. So there's a concept in Taoism called Wu Wei, and it means effortless living. It translates loosely to effortless living. And that's the kind of flow that I work with people on. It's about not so much about flow states, but getting your whole life into the flow so that every moment you're living in this really Zen kind of way. And to define it as I define it, flow is where everything that you want and need to grow and be successful comes to you effortlessly. And it's like when life is conspiring in your favor. So you feel really supported, life becomes fun, you can trust that things are gonna work out. It's one of those things that you kind of have to experience or see someone experiencing to really understand it, because it sounds great, but what does it actually look like in someone's life? And over the years, I developed these 5 flow principles, which are really a way to break it down in a really practical, grounded way where people can understand what they need to do to get in the flow and the kind of mindset and beingness that they have to embody in order to get there. And it really allows people to get dialed into it quickly and have that first experience so they can see how amazing it is and then, continue it. So.
What are the 5 principles? Can you share them?
Yeah, absolutely. The 5 principles are, the first one is follow your highest excitement and inspiration in every moment.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So you can tell already it's going to be a fun way to live, right? You just do what you love doing.
In every moment.
In every moment.
In every moment.
That's the clincher, because people go, oh, okay, I'll do it sometimes, but the more you do it, the more in the flow you get. So it's a really powerful way to live, and it's excitement and inspiration are like our instincts, right? We always wonder, like, how do these animals know exactly what to do? Well, they have instincts, and I believe this is what our default instincts are. We learn to we get culturally programmed out of it, but when we return to that state, we see that, like, we're really supported. All we have to do is do what we love doing, to follow our highest excitement and inspiration, and everything is going to work out.
So there's not much rational thought required, is there really, in order to just follow what feels good in essence?
Yeah, on a certain level, I'd say that's true. I mean, I think that rational thought has its benefits. It certainly helps, you've translated it into what that feeling is. But yeah, at a certain level, it really is about getting in touch with our heart and that feeling sense that I think so many of us have been disconnected from. So that's the first principle. Second principle is practice radical acceptance in every moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
So.
And everyone, practical acceptance, right? Radical acceptance of everyone.
Everyone, everything, every moment. And a qualifier I like to put on that is that it doesn't mean that you're going to be passive now, right? I think a lot of people think that when you practice acceptance, it just means that you don't do anything. You go sit in a meditation retreat all day, that's acceptance, you just sit there. But it's actually not what it is. Radical acceptance is where you're practicing acceptance of everything that comes to your awareness. So if you're feeling really dissatisfied with your life, you accept the dissatisfaction. And if you're feeling like you need to do something to change, then you accept the need to change. So it's basically, you stop fighting. You move into the path of least resistance. That's what that principle is all about. And obviously, that's going to be the path of flow.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
And then the third principle is to follow your intuition at all times. And that's related loosely to the first principle, but it's also more of a distinction, because your intuition sometimes says, hell no, don't do that. This is bad. Like, don't trust that person, or, don't go down that street for some reason. You don't know rationally why, right? But it's an important guidance from your instincts again. So that's a little bit of clarification. The fourth principle is be open to all possibilities in every moment. So that one's kind of self-explanatory, but I think most of us don't realize how much we limit ourselves with our thoughts and how we expect things to be and how we believe that they need to be. But when you really put the intention out to move into a space of being really open to all possibilities, then amazing things start to show up that were just on the periphery all the time and you didn't see. A perfect example of this is that Megan and I met on a street corner at 12:30 p.m. one night at college. We had no idea. We just stopped to talk to each other, and now we've been together for 7 years and have a growing conscious business. So really, there's amazing things in the ethers at all times, and when you open yourself to it, they start to show up. And then the fifth and final principle is to do the opposite of what you'd normally do. Right.
That's the only one so far that hasn't been at all times.
At all times, yeah, exactly.
The first four was now, always,
All times,
all
yeah.
times. The last one, say it again, please.
Right, so do the opposite of what you'd normally do. And this one really is ideally combined with one of the other principles. So if you just go around doing the opposite of what you normally do, that may lead you somewhere questionable. But if you combine it with any of the other 4 flow principles, it's going to lead you outside your comfort zone. So that's a way of basically seeing where your edge is, because the flow doesn't obey your edge. The flow is not staying inside your comfort zone. It's a wild river, like Joseph Campbell would say, it's your hero's journey. So it's going to take you on quite a ride, very transformational ride. So you need to be able to notice when you're kind of, when you're cutting yourself off, when you're not quite living fully in the flow. It's a way to calibrate that and to also help get you out of a rut. When you do the opposite, it shakes things up. It introduces chaos into your environment. So
well, is there a distinction between doing the opposite of what you would ordinarily do or just doing something differently?
Yeah.
I think you could make that distinction.
Yeah, I think you
do something different than you normally do.
Yeah.
Because the opposite sounds like that could be really radical. And,
It can be.
The opposite can get you in trouble,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, I totally agree with that, and I'm a big fan of Joe Dispenza's, and he's a neuroscientist. He's written several books on the brain and the whole concept of neuroplasticity and the fact that our brain is not destined for just going downhill, but that we can really revitalize our brain as we get older and older. So one of the most important things he stresses is to get out of our comfort zone and to do things that we normally would not do, because then it builds new neural pathways in the brain where we have new habits we're developing.
Right.
So it's really about developing new habits, and a lot of times it requires getting out of our comfort zone.
Absolutely. What most of us don't realize, but you start to when you do flow work and do deep inner work, is that we all are very much conditioned, like we have Pavlovian conditioning and patterning. And so every time you do something different or opposite, or you shake things up like Joe Dispenza is recommending, you literally break those patterns. And that allows you to create new patterns that are even more positive and uplifting. So it's really a beautiful thing.
So how do you work with people in order to, kind of use those 5 flow principles? And are there exercises or something you get people to do to start to make those shifts?
Yeah, I mean, the first step is obviously just to explain what they are. A lot of times people will just get it and they'll run with it, and that's awesome. But there's questions that I'll ask people to help them really see the subtleties of it, because they sound pretty simple on the surface, and they are, but it's the embodiment where the real mastery is. And there's a spectrum, right? It's 0 to 100%. If you're doing anything above 70%, you're doing great, and your life is going to be amazing. But the higher you get, it even becomes to a more dramatic degree. So it's all about really understanding the subtleties of it. Like we talked about that with the acceptance principle a little bit, about how it's not just being passive, that you really have to understand that it's radical acceptance in every moment. So there's questions that we'll go through. And just doing the inner work in general, which is actually the other half of getting in the flow, is to actually go inside and see the emotional patterns that are ingrained in our heart and mind, and work through those, and to see where we have limiting beliefs and work through those. Doing that work as well is really supportive. When you do that kind of work really intently and put the time and effort into it, you naturally start to slip into flow. And then the principles just really help you get dialed in and calibrate.
Principles are excellent.
Yeah.
Really good.
I was kind of curious about, you talked about radical acceptance, which obviously inherently is radical.
Yeah.
Does that imply a form of non-judgment to what shows up? Or is it okay to have judgment around it? Just be aware that you're having judgment wherever things are,
You get it.
Except the fact that you're judging.
I want to clarify that because people, they may get fuzzy in the distinctions.
Well, I think the first part you mentioned, where you just are in radical acceptance and there's no non-judgment, that's kind of a highest form of it. Like over time, you'll get there. But the radical part and the distinction is that if you do find yourself judging, to not judge yourself for judging.
Exactly.
Because that's what most people end up doing.
So that's the first level of a self-acceptance as part of the radical acceptance.
Exactly. It's like you notice yourself judging, and then you love yourself anyways, and you accept that, and then you automatically transcend to the place of non-judgment. Yeah.
And I think when we observe ourselves in a pattern like judging other people, and sometimes that's a real pattern for people, it's also really about making that distinction between judging, which really more of has a negative charge to it, and discernment, making the choice not to go there because that's not what you're choosing in the moment. Yeah, so I think that's important. It's important. And when we see ourselves judging, or when we see ourselves around anything or get triggered by something, that's what I was talking about earlier, about being able to recognize that we have that pattern. And when someone behaves in a way toward us that triggers us, what I like to say to my clients in my work is it's not about them. They can be a real jerk, but it's not about them, because if you're triggered, you need to look at what's in your own box of garbage, as I like to call it, really, because it is.
Totally.
So in a way, we owe a debt of thanks, or we should be grateful to that person for pushing that button so that we can become aware of it.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Beautifully said.
Right.
I'm kind of curious as to how important it is with one of your coaching clients, or even somebody who's watching right now, to really identify themselves with the macro worldview of us being spiritual beings, having a human experience, or being energy beings. How important is that to being able to embrace these 5 elements or principles of flow and and embody them?
I think that doing that could help and certainly make it easier. I think that they're pretty grounded. I like to think that they're pretty grounded, but that would certainly help. But I don't think it's necessary. And I think that it's one of the things that this ties back to the magazine, is that we're trying to not make it so out there. We love that stuff. We have a section of the magazine called Without Limits, where we're devoted to exploring that part of reality and human experience. But at the same time, I think that also kind of makes some people uncomfortable with exploring this space more. And so we really like to work with people. Joe Dispenza is a perfect example of that, are really kind of grounding it, stripping away a lot of the jargon and saying like what's really going on here, and explaining it in a way that everybody can connect with. Eventually, I think that people on this journey of growing consciousness and expansion will get to the point where they identify as spiritual being, but we got to meet people where they're at, because this is really about shifting the planet, and so we want to make it accessible ultimately. Yeah.
So I'd like to address one of my very favorite subjects, which is how I even got into this work to begin with, is this idea of science and spirituality. I think it's so important. And what I love about the magazine and the articles that I've read is that you really do bring in that scientific piece. And I think when we have a logical, linear, practical understanding of spirituality, because it's grounded in science, right, going all the way back to Einstein and his colleagues, then it just becomes a matter of common sense. So share a little bit about how you address that in the magazine.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that I've kind of transcended that need personally. I know, I'm sure you two have, where we can intuitionally calibrate to what's true. But nonetheless, the world we live in,
the masses are a different conversation.
Science. Need science. And I think science is super constructive as well, because it actually explains, it takes it from this knowing and like, well, and this is kind of what the flow principles do, is like, well, what's actually going on here? And I find that fascinating personally and very illuminating. And it just helps. This area, I think, has been marginalized for a long time, just because everybody in here is going from this knowing, and everyone's like, yeah, but where is it? I don't see it anywhere. So the science really brings that in. And we live in an amazing time where there's really a lot of enlightened scientists out there, that there is science backing it up now. This is not just hearsay. It's not just people making wild claims. Like on a very sophisticated scientific level, with scientists from Harvard and Stanford and major research institutions around the world, there is science, quantum physics research to back up all of these claims that are being made, that have been being made by a lot of spiritual leaders, for the last 50, 60, 100 years. So it's an amazing time. And we like to bring that in to forward everything that's been happening.
And what about epigenetics? Share a little bit about that.
I was just thinking of Bruce Lipton's work and cellular biology.
Yeah, epigenetics is fascinating.
Share a little bit about that with our audience.
Yeah, we've published some awesome articles on that, and one of the most recent that we found fascinating was this idea of inherited personality. That they did this research on mice where they found that if mice were bullied and then they mated and had offspring, it affected their DNA in such a way that it passed down that same DNA to the offspring, and they exhibited the same personality traits. So we talked about all this ancestral lineage of going back hundreds and hundreds of years of this unhealed trauma that we're still carrying on to. I mean, literally, it's being passed down at a genetic level. But what was also fascinating about the research is that there's this idea, and I think it's changing now with epigenetics, but that whatever your DNA is when you're born, that's the card you're dealt, and you're stuck with it. But it's totally not true. We're learning that DNA is responding in real time to our environment, to our thoughts, to what we're putting in our bodies, what we're doing, yoga, meditation, mindfulness. So in the study, and this was confirmed in the study, the mice were able to, demethylate their DNA, which is basically uncurling of the DNA back to its healed state, and then they were able to learn that behavior, and then they would pass that on to future generations.
So they became less mousy.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I couldn't help it.
I know, that's all right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we're all collectively becoming less mousy now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just amazing that it's not just we're feeling good and we think we're feeling good. We're actually changing, and epigenetics is proving that we're actually shifting at the most fundamental.
Physically.
Yeah, physically. Yeah.
Well, I love what Bruce Lipton says about that. He says, people don't realize that that we're not victims of our genetics. That the genetics, well, how Bruce defines it, if I'm correct, is that the genetics our genetics are the blueprint of all the possible ways that we can show up in the world based on the gene pool and what we inherited genetically, right? But that there are myriad ways that we can show up physically based on our genes, but that our cells are actually informed by the environment, by our thoughts, our perceptions, our beliefs, which means that we can change our cells. We can actually re-inform our cells if they've been misinformed because obesity or heart disease or mental illness or whatever happens to be in our family somewhere, that we're going to be a victim of that. So I think that really brings people to such a place of empowerment that they make those kind of choices to be the way they want to be in their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, I'm also kind of, I'm just so surprised that given the level of scientific advancement in quantum physics, in cellular biology, in all forms of neuroscience, how it is that there still seems to be this gap, that somehow people haven't fully embraced the notion that we're all interconnected on a profound physical level as energy waves, if we just want to call it that. And that we can actually affect our physical evolution on a cellular level simply with our thoughts and how we create our environment. And in a way, it's kind of hysterically silly that it hasn't been, coalesced and coherently acted upon on a more massive scale.
I would totally agree, yeah.
So,
we're kind of scratching our heads with that.
But then again, you wouldn't have a magazine, we wouldn't have a show if we were already doing that.
Right.
So I guess that's the opportunity. I don't know. I was kind of fascinated by one of the part of our conversation that we had pre-show about this model that you've developed with a 6-letter acronym that it goes like BETDAR, BETDAR. In terms of addressing exactly how we can create our reality through conscious awareness. So I would love for you to break that down for us a little bit, and so we can all have a deeper understanding and how we can possibly be applying that in our own lives.
Yeah, thank you for asking
And this
that.
is your brainchild?
This is
The
this is my
BETDAR?
brainchild.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it kind of grew out of that need that there was all this amazing science, but like, how is it actually still happening on a really intensely practical level? Like, how are we doing it? There's a lot of people that believe in the law of attraction. I do, but at the same time, it's also like, well, how does it actually work? Like, what's going on here? And the BETDAR model was what I came up with after a few years of really diving into this and studying and learning and growing and studying human psychology. And BETDAR stands for beliefs, emotions, thoughts, decisions, actions, and results. And it's basically a map of the entire process of how we create our everyday reality and the experiences that we have in our reality. And it starts with beliefs, that's the B, and then it ends at the other end with results. And beliefs are our most fundamental reality construct. Without beliefs, you hear these gurus talking about we're pure awareness at heart, and we are. Pure awareness cannot set up a table and have a TV show. Pure awareness just is, it's embodied, and that's it. So beliefs help us perceive our world and make sense out of the incredible complexity that's around us. So they literally form our framework of reality. So whatever we believe, we're constantly perceiving in our environment. So our beliefs teach us how to interpret events, and how we interpret events decides how we emotionally react to it.
Now, these beliefs are typically what? Inherited from our parents and
Mostly,
environment, as well as through our direct experience.
Exactly, yeah. Mostly from parents, culture, environment, society.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Conditioning.
Exactly, yeah. And then even now we know on a genetic level too, they're passed down. So,
Right.
so our beliefs determine how we react to things emotionally. And based on what we believe in our emotions, that dictates where our thoughts come from. So a lot of people have this idea that thoughts are random, or there's some airy-fairy thing. They're not. They're very, you'll notice that whatever your emotional state is, your thoughts are going to reflect that. So your beliefs and your emotions create your thoughts. And whatever thoughts you're having affect the decisions you make. And whatever decisions you make affect those, that's what's needed to take an action. And whatever action you take, that's the result you're going to get in your life. So using the BETDAR model, you can see that the most important things are working with beliefs and making sure that they're empowering and positive and life-affirming. and to work through any emotional patterns that we've inherited or picked up or developed over the years. And then the rest of that sequence naturally falls into place. We don't have to worry about our thoughts because they're automatically going to be in line with positive beliefs and emotions. And then our decisions, our actions, and our results in life are going to reflect that as well. So it really ties well into Bruce's work, where it's our beliefs that are creating our reality. So by working there, we're able to shift everything else. So you don't have to worry about the details. So.
Right. Great. This is a great conversation. I'm enjoying this. It's right up my alley. So you say that there's some, that you're noticing some shifts, some global shifts in, globally on the planet. Share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah.
What do you see happening on a global level to indicate that consciousness is beginning to permeate society?
So there's a lot of things, but there's two I guess I'd really like to talk about. One of them is just, I think when you're on the internet, just on Facebook even, I think you can really see that the conversation has evolved. I mean, just my perception in the 30 years that I've been here is that just the level of awareness in the media, even with its current faults and everything, I mean, we're having cover stories in Time about mindfulness and about Steve Jobs, contributing much of his success to mindfulness. And there's really this general renaissance that's coming. I think the internet has really elevated the conversation because ideas spread so fast now. So someone starts saying something and makes a really beautiful, inspirational video. Next thing you know, 10 million people have seen it. The world's consciousness has shifted. So I think that's one part of it. And personally, we touched on this a little bit. I think the other part is this incredible quantum physics research and science showing this really intense mind-body connection that's really helping people shift from the reality of life is happening to me to life is being co-created by me. And I know you guys had Reverend Beckwith on, and that's one of his distinctions, which is really beautiful and poetic.
Yeah.
So I think that fundamental shift is happening worldwide, and that's really a sign of the global consciousness shift, is that people are starting to take responsibility instead of feeling like a victim, like we've been taught how to do for a long time.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's important. So what I hear you saying is the technology, of communication, online communication, and the internet, and all of the different vehicles we have there, and then also the scientific piece. I think you're exactly correct. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's more than that, but if you had to ask me the two biggest drivers right now, I'd say that's what
those are very big drivers. Yeah.
Now, I'm kind of curious what you do in your own life personally to kind of keep yourself in the 5 stages of flow. In the flow, and 4 of them are at all times. And so, are there certain practices that you engage in, whether it's meditation, yoga, or what have you, that you find kind of keeps energetically the energetic sorbet, if you will?
All of the above. Doing yoga and meditation certainly helps. I think that those are really important. But the truth is that it's just really reminding yourself. It's like making a habit out of it. You kind of have to just, when something comes up, you have to remind yourself that, okay, I got to trust that principle. And over time, you really just learn how to trust it. There's no magic formula. It's just repetition, really. I think in that sense, yoga and meditation have really helped because I do yoga and meditation every day. That was really the foundation of my growth and my ability to do everything that I'm doing now. Was that daily yoga and meditation practice for years. And that also showed me, also went from being totally not flexible to be able to do headstands. So I realized how much power there is in this daily repetition. So by just setting the intention to live in alignment with the principles and reminding myself and just holding them at the forefront, within a couple weeks, it was pretty deeply internalized.
Well, in your article, which I read on spirituality in the brain, that was fabulous. I can't wait to make a copy of that for all of from my people, because and I'm just going to throw it out and then you can elaborate on it. That people that have spirituality as up in their upper consciousness and their lives, where they're really focused on spirituality, have a stronger cerebral cortex in the brain. Their brain is healthier.
Yeah.
Right? So share a little bit about that article.
Yeah,
that you wrote.
There was some great research that came out. That's the kind of stuff we're always looking for, is research showing how effective this, living like this is. And I think that's because it's a fundamental part of who we are, right? This spiritual side of ourselves. I think we've been cut off from it from a long time, but you always hear mind, body, spirit for a reason, because it's a part of ourselves. So, as I see it, when we start to bring that into our lives and live like that, we start to activate those parts of our brain that are associated, with spirituality and that are maybe dormant and not being used. And I also think it speaks to just that way of living, that it's like, it's the universe, for lack of a better term, telling us that this is a positive way to be, to show us, on a really microscopic level, that this is a healthy way to live. You know what I mean? When you eat a Twinkie or some McDonald's or whatever, your body deteriorates. So this is showing us that our body is thriving under these circumstances, and it's kind of like a marker that we should keep doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what role do you think religion has played, traditional religion, in that?
So it kind of reminds me of Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning.
Mm-hmm.
I think religion has answered these big questions for us before science came around and had, answers that maybe had a little bit more something you could touch. So I think religion really was kind of like a guiding light for humanity for a long time. And there is parts of religion that are very accurate and are very true. And I think that there's a lot of wisdom in spiritual traditions around the world. I certainly, regularly follow, Hindu philosophy and Taoist philosophy and, other different traditions, Western traditions. But, I think with religion, the point is to be discerning, right? Is that there's some great things in there and there's some things in there that have been very much distorted and used to maybe manipulate people over the years. Because religion and power were synonymous for a long time. So, but I think ultimately, again, if you're following your intuition, you'll take the best pieces of religion, that, the best wisdom it has to offer. So.
Yeah, good. That's a really good way to look at it. I don't know where I read this, but I remember reading an article. It was talking about religion in the Dark Ages, let's say. I mean that literally and figuratively. Religion was like that candlelight, where people really needed to have that light to have in their lives. But today, it's like,
now we have
but you have
electricity.
a candlelight in brilliant sunshine. Yeah. We don't need the candlelight.
That's right.
Because we have the light all around us. So I think there's been a shift. And it's not that I'm throwing religion out of the conversation. I think religion can be, very powerful in people's lives, and it has really helped a lot of people. But I think that we need to be discerning and not giving our power away to dogma. Having been raised a Catholic, there was so much dogma that I just took in hook, line, and sinker. It's taken me a long time to really recover. So.
Right, exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head with that discernment, because I think it swings both ways. Like maybe religion isn't as essential as it once was, but now we have the internet, which is a free-for-all. So you have to be really discerning with that. I'm not saying the internet's a religion, although it probably will be eventually. But yeah, I think that's just a great quality to cultivate.
So how can people, get involved in their own raising of consciousness? What ideas do you have? Obviously, we're recommending to all of our viewers to subscribe to your magazine, because I think it's really a light, right? That's guiding so many people, and hopefully many more. So we encourage our audience to go ahead and subscribe to Conscious Lifestyle Magazine, just .com, right? Is that where they would go?
ConsciousLifestyleMag.com.
ConsciousLifestyleMag.com. So what other resources other than your magazine and your websites would you recommend for people to check out?
There's a lot of great resources out there. I guess I would recommend a couple of books that Megan and I have, and authors that Megan and I have really been resonating with lately. And one of them is Pam Grout. Her whole thing is about translating quantum physics into like this really practical methodology where you can actually, she has these experiments that you can do to actually prove that these are real things in your life. So we like that. That's
cool.
We need to have her on the show.
That's very cool.
Pam Grout, if you're listening.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
Where does she live?
I don't know. I think she bounces around. She's a big
We'll find her.
We'll
find her.
Yeah.
And again, we mentioned Peter Russell, really loving his stuff too. A little heady, he's definitely leans toward the quantum physics side, but he's also really well spoken, and so he is able to translate things. And so both of their work is really great. And then, there's some really amazing websites. More on the arty kind of spiritual side, we like this website, Time Wheel. We're really into that right now. So
great. Okay.
Okay, well, we're getting close to the end of this
Yeah.
conversation, unfortunately.
Yes,
which,
I can't believe how
just
quickly
flies
it's
as
flown.
always.
So we always like to ask what would you like to leave our audience with? What would you like them to take away from this show? If you could share like 2 pearls of wisdom for them, what would they be?
2 pearls of wisdom.
Yes, right? And you're going to look right into that
Yeah.
camera, Justin.
So the first pearl of wisdom, I would say, is that to always remember that everything you're experiencing in your life is a reflection of what's going on inside your heart and mind. And the second pearl of wisdom is to always follow your highest excitement and inspiration, because it's the funnest way to live.
That's beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Yeah, that's great.
Well, thank you, Justin. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you guys.
It was
Yeah.
really wonderful. Really, thank you very much. Well, that was just a wonderful interview with Justin Faerman. And now it's going to be very interesting to see how Mr. Zimmerman picks this up, this wonderful conversation up in his segment, Stu's Views. So Stu, take it away.
Well, thank you. I'm getting all formal now. Mr. Zimmerman, clearly
Well, Mr.
I got some respect. Normally that was reserved for my father.
You always have respect, Stu.
Oh, thank
from
you.
me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, everybody. Here we go with this edition of Stu's Views. Now, we're recording this right around the solstice, summer solstice. So this is the time of maximum daylight in this part of the world. And by the time you are seeing this program, we're going to be really close to, or possibly after, July 4th. So I started thinking about, we talked earlier about flow, we're talking about presence, talk about freedom, and I think about this country, and I think about the light of the solstice. And what I come away with, of course I always come away with the same conclusion anyway, is that it's all about love and how we can just simply love our lives more. And I started to go into thinking about the quantum physics and the science of the true nature of our reality, and in the context of July 4th, and I started to come up with a different invocation, a new pledge of allegiance, if you will. So I'm going to do my best to remember it and kind of just expound it and just kind of do one of these. But you know, I may actually refer to some notes, which of course would be right in line with what Justin said earlier about doing something different, doing something the opposite. Normally I'm just talking off the top of my bald head. So here we go with a little new pledge of allegiance. I can still do this though. Where's my, yeah. I pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the consciousness of a united state of awareness, and to the vibration, which is ultimately all that it really is. We live in one world, with God ever present, truly indivisible, with love, joy, clean water, fresh food, and happiness for all. So that's my pledge. Now I know it's a little, yeah, okay, go ahead, I hear you. Thank you very much.
I'm clapping for you. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll print it out, we'll all get a copy. So let me chunk it down a little bit because it sounded a little bit like a little cosmic, okay? So to really bring it down, what we're talking about here is simply this. I'm pledging a sense of consciousness to do my best to be aware of the interconnection of all things. And truly with an awareness of quantum physics, to really be aware that I, you, all of this is simply energy waves vibrating at a frequency that ultimately we're inseparable from and interconnected by. And whether you call this thing God, Spirit, Source, the universe, the unified field, energy, whatever it's called, it doesn't make a difference. It just is. And to the extent that I can be aware of that, that changes my life forever, and probably yours as well. And I want to give a very specific example now, really quickly, and it is about love. And how can I apply this? So as said last time in the last Stu's Views, I am in love, and I am even more in love right now than I was back then. And that's the truth of it. Yes, and I'm so grateful for that. And there's only so many ways I can say I love you. I love you. I really love you. I can even throw in a couple of F-love bombs. I effing love you. I effing really do. And you know, after a while, the words don't do it justice. And so instead, I'm working with a new form of communication, at least new for me. And that is to see how much I can express that with my eyes. And just have that look, you know, that old song, Look of Love, yeah. And just really communicate that's timeless and energetic. And see if I can communicate that not only with my eyes, but with also my touch and my tone. And just maybe, I don't need to speak so much, at least not on this talk show, but beyond that, just see if I can communicate that energetic love and that deep sense of gratitude that I get to be here in this form for a limited time only, and that I have a playmate and a love mate that we can just explore it all with and create that world that we want to live in. So that's it for this Stu's Views. And now it's time for Patricia and her quantum quote of the day.
Stu, I love you.
Oh, thank you, sweetheart. I love you too.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
do.
That was great. I love that. Will you print that out for us so we can
I
put
will.
that on our website?
Well, yes, I will.
Yeah,
I
great,
promise.
Great. Okay, so quantum quotes for today. Today we're going to talk about the importance of imagination. And I'm going to give you two quotes today. And the first one is one of my absolute favorite quotes from one of my absolute favorite people, and that is Uncle Albert, as in Einstein, of course. And Einstein was a mystic. He was really a mystic. And you may be surprised to hear me say that Einstein was a mystic, but the truth is that he really knew, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that everything was energy and that there was no separation, and that this world that we live in is nothing but an optical delusion of consciousness that we're creating all the time with our thoughts and with our feelings. And his colleagues, Schrodinger, Heisenberg, Max Planck, also agreed. And it was very interesting because they all died mystics, because in their days they could not satisfy the traditional physicists of their day with proof that this was so. So they really all died mystics. And this is what Einstein says: imagination is greater than knowledge. Imagination is greater than knowledge. So much emphasis today is placed on knowledge, how much we know, and what we know and how much we know. But really, what is knowledge? It's a thought, and thought is energy, and that energy comes from what? Our imagination. So imagination is critically important in life, in our ability to manifest a life that is a reflection of our greatest dreams, our visions, our dreams, our hopes, and our desires. So I'd like to go right into the second quote, which I gleaned from an article that I read in Conscious Lifestyle magazine. And it was from Linton Bergson, who wrote this article on the importance of imagination. And I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here, but first I want to give you the quote. And this is a quote from his book called The Purposeful Vision. And here's the quote: imagination is the only state of mind that allows us to be free from the limiting reality we live in. Imagination is the only state of mind that allows us to be free from the limiting state that we live in. That is a very powerful statement. And I think what Linton meant by this is that when we can really be free to allow our imagination to just expand and grow, it takes us out of our limited thinking. It takes us out of our humdrum everyday life. You know, we wake up at the same time every day. You know, we use the bathroom the same way we always did. We go down and we have a cup of coffee out of the same cup. We go to work. We take the same route to work. We meet the same people. We have the same conversations. We look the way people expect us to look. And we never get really out of our comfort zone. And we were talking about this today in the show, and how important it is for us to get out of our comfort zone and to build those new neural pathways in the brain. So The truth is that we cannot create anything in life if we cannot see it as a possibility. So we need to have our visions, our hopes, and our dreams. It's so important. If we don't have our visions, our hopes, and our dreams and focus on them, then they're never, ever, ever going to happen. So what I'm suggesting to you is that you focus on whatever it is that lights you up in your life. What is it that you want to achieve? What's this vision, dream, hope, aspiration that you have? If you focus on it every day, if you're accountable in doing it every day, then it's only a matter of time before it's going to happen, because you're literally, from a quantum physics standpoint, from a neuroscience standpoint, building new neural pathways in the brain, creating new habits. And I wasn't going to mention Joe Dispenza, but I will here very briefly. He says that our personality in life is made up of our attitude, our beliefs, and our habits. And when we can change our attitude to be happy, and when we can change our beliefs to know the truth of who we are and the power that we have to create, and when we can instill habits in our daily lives like mindfulness, meditation, yoga, being present, being not judgmental, when we can really develop those kind of habits, we create a new personality, which then gives us a new personal reality. So I hope that you will all take this to heart, and today I want you to go in and think, what is the most exciting vision or dream that I have in my life that's personal to me that I would like to manifest, and get to work on it. So thanks for watching today. That's it for Quantum Quotes.
Excellent as always.
Yes, thank you very much. So thanks for watching, and remember, until we meet next time,
Get conscious
now. If you are passionate about your message, if you want your book to be the best it can be, and if you want someone to do it for you with your collaboration every step of the way, then Ellen Reed is the one for you. Get Conscious Now is proud to be sponsored by American Riviera Bank. It's our bank, and we feel good about it.
When I was growing up as a kid, I used to go around with him and watch him.
My mother and I both worked at Lowry Field.
To keep on doing this together.
Welcome to Dayton Fig, located in historic La Arcada Plaza in downtown Santa Barbara.
Our menu focuses on products that are raised in the state of California, inspired by the flavors of the Riviera.
And we are proud to be sponsoring this program.
I'm attorney Gregory Lowe. I will prepare your trust, bankruptcy, divorce, conservatorship, probate, evictions. All of this I can do at an affordable price and with caring. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kelley Brandenburg. I've been a stylist for the last 15 years. I'm a color specialist, as well as I provide a wide variety of other services. You can find me at 19 Blue Salon in the heart of downtown. I'm happy to be a sponsor of Get Conscious Now.